Hello and welcome. I am Scarperlock, and this is City of Heroes on the Rebirth server. We are with Quintessence last, our level 44 brute, who has 19 million experience earned with just over a quarter million to go to get to level 45. We probably will get there in this episode, and almost 41 million influence, and we're on a story arc for Maxwell Christopher. I do want to point out, just to get rid of some salvage, I went ahead and crafted some recipes I may need in the future. I got a couple of recharge enhancers, and I think I made an endurance reducer, and they're in the base in the enhancement table. There's also, I made a Doctored Wounds level 48. We can't even use it yet until this level is over. I now have actually 2 Doctored Wounds and 1 preventive medicine. So my feeling on this is I'm just going to, like, as I collect them, I'm going to go ahead and craft, and whichever healing one, whether it's, I think, preventive medicine, doctored wounds, and there's a third one, miracle. Whichever one I get 6 of first is going to go in here. I'm not going to worry about getting the exact right one because it's not going to really synergize with anything else. If I have the slots to spare, I might put a 5th slot on these guys and possibly think about a defense set, but my guess is that's probably not going to happen before we get to 50th level, because even if we have the slots, I'm not going to have probably the reward merits to buy the recipes, and I won't find enough recipes. So what we're going to work on with reward merits is Touch of Fear for this, and then what we're going to work on, maybe as we collect them, if we get pretty close, then I might use reward merits to buy the last 1 or 2, is going to be one of the heal sets. And that's probably going to be the last set that we put on this character. We may not get that one. I think we should be able, with reward merits, to get the Touch of Death. And with the reward merits and combined that we have made a couple of them, we might be able to get Doctored Wounds on this one. Don't look for that before very close to the end of this series, at the end of Season 6, just because of how long it takes to acquire both recipes and reward merits. Anyway, we're on a story arc for Christopher, and by the way, we have 500 reward merits. The Touch of Death is like 150 to 250 each. I think it averages around 200. We need, one of them is 50, and the others are all like 200, so we need like 1,050. I want to say something like that reward merits, so we're about halfway there. We'll get some more when we finish this story arc, and we'll get some more each Monday when they reboot the server. So we're going to call him. We get introduced to a new contact, Unai Kemen, and then we're going to continue talking about missions. And he says, if Nemesis intended to start a war with the Council, I don't know if Nemesis intended to start a war with the Council, but it looks like that might be what's happened. They're having a battle. You need to stop it. And again, oh look, we're just going to board the train. I'm not reading all the details, because if you want to see all the details of every single story, you can watch the Silver Phoenix playthrough, and I go over the stories in much more detail. Because we've already seen them, I don't want to waste people's time. We need to rescue 8 people. So I'm going to start on this side for once, because a lot of times hostages are around here. And of course, like wherever I start, there aren't any. There's one. Is there one? No. Usually there are some in this area. So this is going to be just wander around till you find stuff. I really wish someone had told them not to do missions like this. That these giant outdoor missions where you just have to find 8 guys, and especially in the dark, you can't see anything. I mean, you can kind of see, but it's in the dark. Most of that's out of the control of the game, because it's just whatever the time of the city is. But you're in the dark half the time. There's no particular way to find. There are no sounds or glows to find the hostages, so they're so much harder to find than everybody else. I really don't understand over the years why it never occurred to the developers of City of Heroes, who were pretty good in so many other ways, to do something about finding hostages on open maps like this, because it can be so difficult to do and just frustrating. And there are two kinds of difficult, right? There's the fun challenge, and then there's this kind of thing, which is just annoyance. And it just seems like sometimes they didn't differentiate between the two. I know for sure Statesman didn't differentiate between the two. To him, hard was hard, and if it was hard because it was annoying, he was perfectly okay with that. I mean, he never would have put it that way, but that certainly is the way he ran things. Okay, so we found 3 people, and we have 5 to go. So there usually are, as I said, several over in that section. They're almost never just on the open street. As you can see here, we've got another one. And we've aggroed some other guys, but we should be alright. Mainly we want to free her. So we freed her. He's a captain. We want to hit him last. And I know you guys are looking at my health bar thinking, what's going on? Are we going to get killed? No, we're fine. I had to take it on the chin from those 2 lieutenants just for a bit to free the hostage, but now that we're turning our attention to the lieutenants and debuffing them and kicking their butts, they have no chance. There's a boss, but we're not really concerned with the boss. We're mostly concerned with the hostages. So this is annoying because it clears the map on whichever level you go, and then when you go to the other levels, it doesn't clear the map, so you can't always tell. You don't always remember if you've been to every single level, but we know we came in at the top but didn't search the top, so we'll just search these levels and then go back up after we defeat the bosses. So dual bosses. Last time I did this, I screwed up, so let me vindicate myself. These guys are +3. And let's smack them around. This is a pretty rough combo of bosses just because it's like there's no good choice on which one to hit first. If you go after Nemesis first, he's going to go D-solid. And then you have him still up while you turn to the other guy. So that's what I did the last time, and I guess it wasn't the most effective. This way, I think the other problem is the Archon is more powerful than Nemesis himself. And this way we get rid of him, and we don't have 2 guys pounding on us. And now we can just debuff Nemesis, and he's screwed. We know that a single false Nemesis is not going to be proof against us. We've beaten them solo many times before, right? So they're easy enough to defeat. Notice, however, a single +3 boss gets 20,000 XP, and so you can see that we're getting XP hand over fist. Remember, we needed about 250,000 when we started this session, so these 2 bosses just alone are what, 40,000 out of the 200 and whatever 70,000 we needed. They're like 15% of what we needed just from beating these 2 bosses, which is kind of crazy. Just how, and if they were +4, they would be worth even more. Gosh, this is annoying. All right, what are we missing? 40% chance. And in City of Heroes, a 40% chance is really like a 10% chance. Look at how much we're missing. See if we can get Soul Drain to work. I don't want to use up the accuracy inspirations I have left just in case I need them later. I probably won't need them later now that we've beaten the bosses, but you know, one never knows. Okay, so there don't appear to be any hostages up here. I always try to look underneath the overhangs because a lot of times you'll find hostages under there. You rarely find them in the open. They're usually up against walls. And I'm not interested in those guys, so I'm just going to ignore them. There's a hostage. Not really up against a wall, but it's up against a car. It's interesting that the instructions are to stop a Nemesis Council battle, but this has mostly just been Council. Right? There really isn't much of a battle going on here. 3 more people to rescue. Again, I'm just ignoring these guys because I don't need to kill them, defeat them, whatever. They won't chase me that far. They're on a pretty tight leash usually. So there's a frightened Nemesis Lieutenant. Interesting. That isn't what I would expect. What I normally would expect would be Nemesis intimidating Council, not Council intimidating Nemesis. Found a clue. And what's the clue say? Oh, his story is, this is all my fault. All of my recent success against Lord Nemesis, as trivial though it may be, made the Council think they're weak. Ah, that's why. And there's a dead body. Is this one of the people we're looking for? Probably not. Nope. Oh, that's why they keep seeing me. I forgot to turn my stealth on. Why didn't one of you guys remind me? Yeah, sometimes I wish this was some kind of a live stream where you guys could tell me when I forget to do stuff like that, because I forget sometimes. That's because our character was... Whoops, did I see something down there? No. Our character was defeated in the last mission, and that thing takes longer to recharge than the other toggles. And so I turned the other toggles on and forgot to hit that one, 30 seconds later when it recharged. Alright, so we have 2 more guys to find. And I think, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause it here. I'll find them and then bring you back when I find each one, because otherwise you're just going to be bored out of your minds. Well, no sooner did I say that and pause the video than here we go. Found one. So there's only going to be one more after this. So we need to find the last citizen. I'm going to pause it again, and I'll bring you back when we find the last guy. Alright, I found the final person. Right in the spot I started looking. I guess I missed her. Super jumped around too fast. I basically did my thing that I've shown you guys before, where you just start tab targeting. And sooner or later, the tab targeting brings you to the last protectors of the last hostage. So we have completed that mission, and we are back in Brickstown, and we can call our contact, who says, from what that Nemesis soldier told you and what I've learned on my own, it looks like the center has ordered the Council to strike directly at the Nemesis army. I guess the center controls the Council. We've done a lot to hurt Nemesis recently, so I guess the center thinks that Nemesis has got to be pretty weak right now. This could be really bad, Quintessence lass. Whoever wins will absorb the other's group. Yeah, we started an accidental civil gang war, I guess. The Nemesis army and the Council are going for each other's throat in an all-out war, and Nemesis seems to be losing. I can't believe it, but it looks like Nemesis forces have been hurt worse than I ever suspected by all the defeats you've handed him. Okay, so, obviously I know this story, but, buddy, it's Nemesis. If they seem that weak, It's got to be a plan. It's on purpose. You should know this. They are luring us into a trap. They're trying to make it look like Nemesis has been defeated so he can come back without us expecting it or preventing it. So we're gonna go weaken the council and try to find intelligence on the council. And we're playing right into Nemesis's hands. And yeah, there's kind of nothing you can do about it because that's the way the story goes. And that's kind of the way Nemesis is. He's got plots within plots within plots. And what we're going to find out at the end of this, after we think we've defeated him, is that we actually did his bidding. Because that's how Nemesis is. It's like fighting Doctor Doom from the Marvel Comics, or Lex Luthor, I guess, from DC. I'm not sure who would be the Nemesis equivalent. Nemesis is like Doctor Doom, you know, with the Doom bots and stuff. From Marvel, who's the equivalent of that in DC Comics? Morgan Edge, maybe? I don't know if Edge makes artificial copies of himself, though. Lex Luthor did. If you go back to like the crazy 90s Superman comics before Peter David's Supergirl, the Matrix Supergirl was actually working for Alexander Luthor, who was supposedly the long-lost son of Lex Luthor, which it actually turns out was a clone of Lex Luthor, pretending to be his own son. Oh, there's a guy. I was wondering, where are the guys? Okay, there we go. I was wondering, like, why are there only glowies in here? I just missed one or two of these guys. So yeah, Lex Luthor, they weren't robots, right? They were like, it was like a clone of himself. And then the clone died, and then the real Lex Luthor came back. Because the story went that Lex Luthor supposedly got radiation poisoning from being around kryptonite so much and died of cancer. And then his son from Australia, with red hair and a red beard, came to America to claim his father's fortune, claimed to be Alexander Luthor, was embarrassed by his father's legacy and was going to turn LexCorp good. And, of course, it was actually Lex Luthor in a cloned body. I believe that's the way the story went. And then, at least in the Supergirl comic I have, the miniseries, that Lex Luthor, Alexander Luthor, whatever, ended up, like, aging, like accelerated aging, and we've leveled up. And he was dying in that book, but I don't think he actually died, and I don't know what happened after that. Because I wasn't following the Superman comics, I was only reading Supergirl. And I think I got that miniseries in back issue form and not when it was originally launched, and consequently I wasn't following any of the other comics that were coming out at the time. So I'm not sure exactly how Lex came back after aging. After the clone aged, you know, and lost his hair and got old and withered, and then eventually, like, regular old Lex Luthor was back. So my guess is his body was probably restored somehow while the clone was in charge, and then, you know, came back to normal. Comics love to do this. It seems like a character has died, but they really haven't. The old rule in Champions used to be, if you don't see the body, if you don't see the corpse, they're not dead. Because that was the old rule in comics, of course. Now, even if you do see the corpse, they're not dead. But definitely, if you know there's an explosion or something, or you just hear that they died and they die off screen, in the comics, they're not dead. And that's always an out that they would leave in the old school days in case, you know, a new writer came along and wanted to use that character. They would have the ability to do that, right? If they came up with a cool idea for Lex Luthor, then, you know, you want them to be able to write him back into the story, which is why nobody ever dies. In fact, I remember going to my comic book shop, and so after the New 52 had come out in 2011, sometime around 2013, something like that, they decided to kill off Robin, who was this Robin is like the fourth one over, who's Batman's son. So they decided to kill him off. And of course, it was an event because everything they do like this in comics is an event with crossovers and everything. And I was not reading Batman at the time, or Detective Comics, or any of the other Bat books, except Batgirl, because Gail Simone was writing it, and I liked Gail Simone back then. Since recently, after doing that Batgirl series, I feel like she's sort of I haven't liked her stuff as much. Let's put it that way. And I'm sure there are various editorial reasons for that. But I was reading her Batgirl, and I don't know, it was on issue 18 or something. And of course, Robin had died, and I knew that was going to happen because it's never a surprise. They always hype it so that people will buy the comic, and so I knew it had happened, and I didn't care because I wasn't reading those books, and I knew it was just a gimmick, right? But Batgirl tied into it, and there was this little symbol, like a little R, I think, with a circle around it for the Requiem for Robin. And now we're going to go to King's Row, so let's auto-teleport there and defeat Cassidy and his aides. So this is the council guy who's in charge of this stuff. Anyway, so the Requiem marker was on this title, and all the comics, all the Bat books, probably the Superman books, I don't even remember them all, but a bunch of the comics that came out over a month or two period all had this sort of requiem, this tie-in to the death of Robin. And so so I had my Batgirl comic on order. I have a pull list at the comic book shop. And so when the comic book shop guy went and got my stuff and handed it to me, gosh, in the old days when we still went in person to stores, now they mail me my stuff. And by the way, these guys are going to be only +2 to me because it's based on the last mission, and the last mission was +3 to me when I was level 44. So this will be an easy mission. Anyway, he brought them to me, and he handed me the Batgirl, and he said, he said, have you read, Batman, I don't know, was it Batman Incorporated number 18 or 8 or whatever it was with the death of Robin? This was some Grant Morrison story. I'm not a fan of Grant Morrison, the comic book writer, so I don't read anything by him at all. And he said, have you read that? And I said, no. And he said, oh, do you want, here's a reprint. They have like reprints all like up in the front of the shop in like a place of honor, if you want to call it that, a place where it was easy to find. He said, here, do you want a reprint? And he went to hand it to me, and I'm like, no, why would I want that? And he said, because this ties in. I'm like, I don't care. He said, but do you know what happens in this? I said, yeah, it's the death of Robin. It's BS. He said, what do you mean it's BS? I said, he's going to come back. He said, oh, no, it's the death of Robin. Like, this one's permanent. I said, yeah. That's what they said about, and I started listing them off. Dark Phoenix, right? This one, that one. Sharon Carter, right? Because I'd heard that she was back, who was the girlfriend of Captain America. And I said, because I hadn't been reading the Captain America stuff, I said, man, pretty much literally the only person who stayed permanently dead is Bucky. And he looked at me and he was like, are you kidding? And I said, what? He said, Bucky's been back for a while. I'm like, well, so that just proves my point. I mean, all these characters that they said would never ever come back and that were permanent deaths, Supergirl, all of them, they brought back. So they'll bring him back. And of course they did. Right? They always do. They tried to tell us when they did the death of Superman that it was permanent, right? That Superman was going to permanently die, and everybody knew he wasn't going to permanently die. You can't kill off Superman because then they can't write comic books about him anymore. And he's one of their one of their top-selling properties. Same thing with Batman. You can't. They can't kill them. So I just said, no, I'm not going to buy into this silly hype, and I didn't purchase it. But I still remember, like, when I rattled off the ones who had died, and he's just looking at me with his mouth open, and I said the only one that stayed dead was this guy, and then, like, well, no, actually, he didn't stay dead either. Like, you just proved my point. Nobody stays dead in comic books. And the reason that they don't is because the writer who kills them may intend for the character to stay dead, right? But some other writer comes along who was a fan of that character and is like, but I want to write that character, and they get permission from the editors to bring them back. And all the editors and the people who run the comic company ask is, will this sell more comics than not bringing him back, right? If bringing Batman's son back to life will sell more comic books than leaving him dead, then he comes back to life. Jason Todd, Robin, number 2, who was killed by the Joker, yeah, he's alive. He's called the Red Hood now. Bucky came back. Everybody who watched Captain America the Winter Soldier knows that. Spoiler alert. I assume everybody who watches this has seen it. Sharon Carter was killed in the 1960s and stayed dead for like 35 years, and then in the early 2000s they brought her back. Turned out she didn't actually die. They faked her death and then sent her to deep cover because she was Agent 13, right? And she has a little bit of a cameo in the Captain America movies. And so, yeah, they always bring people back. Nobody ever stays dead. And you see a little bit of that in the movies, right? They kill off Nick Fury, they bring him back. They kill off Bucky, they bring him back. They kill off Coulson, they bring him back in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, yeah, this happens all the time in the comics. And sometimes in the comic book-based movies. And it's always because the new writer wants to do something with this character, right? I mean, even in Star Wars, again, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Star Wars Episode 9 and you want to and you don't want to have it spoiled, even though we're like a year and a half since it came out, then I guess fast forward a couple minutes. But yeah, they brought back Palpatine, who clearly died and exploded. Why? Because they needed a cool villain and J.J. Abrams wanted to write him, right? Wanted to have him in his story. So that's what happens when you have a long-running franchise with multiple writers. You often get this business of the characters are killed by one writer and then another writer comes along and writes a story about how they weren't really killed. By the way, that's why in the old days, Silver Age, Golden Age, and especially Silver Age, and probably Bronze Age as well, there were standing orders at the companies that when you kill a character, you do it in a way they don't see the body, right? Do it in an explosion or some way that if another writer comes along and wants to use this character, they can write a quick little one-page summary of how the guy escaped from the death and then write this character, right? You don't have Lex Luthor, say, die of radiation poisoning and then he'd be buried in the ground and make it unambiguously clear that he is 100% dead, right? Because then the next writer that comes along that wants to do a story with Lex Luthor can't. And then they have to have him come back in an even more unbelievable way, right? Now, George Lucas obviously didn't intend for there to be another story about the Emperor. And that's why he made a very unambiguous death for the Emperor. But in comics in the old days, I think they were actually understanding orders to not make the death so definite that you can't come back from it, because then the next writer to take over this character isn't going to be able to bring the villain back or bring the character back or what have you. So they've always tried to make changes that weren't completely permanent, because these comics have to go for years, maybe decades, and somebody else might have an idea that they want to use this character with. I always remember there was some writer who was complaining about comic books and said that he was approached by DC to write, and they talked about him maybe writing The Flash, and this reason he decided to do it was he came up with this idea of having the Flash basically permanently lose a limb, like a leg, and be confined to a wheelchair, right? Permanently. And the editors were like, well, you can do it for a story arc, but then you're going to have to find a way to bring the leg back. And he was like, no, this needs to be permanent so that he can never run again. And the editors were like, what, are you kidding? Well, why would you do a comic book about a superhero who can run at fast speed, and the first thing you do is take his powers away permanently? So they said, we'll let you do it for a story arc or while you're the writer, but by the time you're done with your run on the comic, it's going to have to get back to normal so that other writers can write the Flash as a speedster. And he got mad and was like, "Nope, not doing that. You guys aren't giving me my creative freedom." And I thought, well, this is crazy. Like, people read The Flash to read about a guy who can run really fast. Why would you take that away from him? Just like at one point they had Superman lose a bunch of his powers, and he was like using his cape as almost like brass knuckles wrapped around his fists so that he wouldn't hurt his fists, and like they depowered him to like a street level hero. And then they were shocked that the readers hated it. It's like, yeah, there were thousands of street level heroes. Why would I want a street level hero when I'm reading Superman? Like, let's take away the thing that makes this character Superman and then be surprised that the readers don't like it. And again, you can do it for a story arc, but when you want to make it permanent or semi-permanent, it doesn't even make any sense. Why would you do that? And this writer's whole thing was, well, I want to write this superhero comic, but I don't want it to be like a superhero comic. I want it to be more like, about a disabled guy and his struggles with disability. It's like, well, you can write an independent comic about that. Why would you do that with The Flash? And I don't really understand that, but I can understand the editorial point of view. And this was something the writer had written, like, well, I don't know, it was a blog entry, but he certainly expected the reader to sympathize with him about how quote-unquote unreasonable the editors are being. And I read that and said, well, I would have said the same thing if I were the editor. You want to do it for a story arc, fine, but you better grow his leg back when the story arc is over. Because people don't read The Flash to read about a guy who doesn't run fast. Just like they don't read Superman to read about a guy who's not super. Or read about Wonder Woman to read about a woman who isn't a wonder. Right? I can read about people who don't fly, punch their way through brick walls, and bounce bullets off their chest in every other story on Earth. The only place where I can read about Superman is in a Superman comic. So why would I want to not read about Superman in the Superman comic? And I can read about people who don't run at incredibly fast speeds anywhere else. Why would I want to read about a guy who's confined to a wheelchair and doesn't run at super speeds in The Flash? Like, I don't understand that. Other than that, this guy just wants to be different and doesn't really want to write a Flash comic. All right, it's pretty clear. One of the things that keeps throwing me, because I usually toss it at the beginning and not in the middle of battles, but when I throw it in the middle of a fight, one of the things that keeps throwing me off is just how long the animation lock is in Soul Drain, where you get locked into the animation and can't do anything. I always expect it to be faster than it is when I'm in the middle of combat. And I don't notice it before combat. That's not the end of the story arc, is it? I don't think so. I don't notice it when I throw it before combat because I run in, I throw it, and then I start. But when I'm in the middle of combat and I'm trying to click inspirations or trying to click another power, and I hit that, I suddenly realize just what a long animation time it has. Alright, let's head over to our buddy Blue Steel and get our next level up. And our salvage is maxed again. So we're level 45 now, guys. When we finish this story arc, then I will stop recording for a while until we get into our level 46 story arc. And when we come back after that hiatus, we'll be on Season 6. So Season 5 is nearly over. Alright, so we have 3 slots. And I was going to add Dark Consumption and 2 Physical Perfections. Let's do that. So we need Endurance Modification and we need Recharge. And I will do that off screen. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I certainly have. Let's talk to our contact. And he says, Cassidy's under wraps. The council is going to need to reorganize. I was hoping that it would be enough of a pause to even things out between Nemesis and the Council, and some reports are already pointing to that. And then he says, it's like Nemesis was doing something to distract us. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm afraid of something. Quintessence left something bad. Maybe paranoid. I hope I'm just paranoid. Talk to me soon. Yeah, he finally realized we just fell into a Nemesis trap. Nemesis pretended to look weak to get the Council to attack him. That made us take out the Council, and now Nemesis moves in. Because he's nowhere near as weak as he pretends to be. But we'll find that out in the next episode. Until then, folks, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes on the Rebirth server.